to discuss about the induction motors, uh, specifically polyphase induction motors. Okay, polyphase means obviously it is three-phase induction motor. That is what we are going to learn here. Okay, so we are not going to talk about the single-phase induction motors. So only our scope is here for three-phase induction motors, right? So let's move on and try to understand the induction motor. Okay, so I think you are already familiar with what is induction motor and the properties of the induction motor. So this is the just overview of the induction motor. So why we what is the importance of the induction motor? Okay, so in the industry, for most of the applications, okay, so uh, in cranes, fans, so then compressors, so any kind of applications, you can find that the three-phase induction motors are the most commonly used type of motor. Okay, so the specifically this kind of motor is known as the industry's workhorse. Okay, so the main reason for that is this kind of induction motor can be uh, uh, used in various kind of applications, and it is much more reliable, uh, have very reliable operation and have comparatively compared with the other motors like DC motors. So the required maintenance work is also uh, small. That means we don't need much of maintenance as DC motor. So then when you compare with the synchronous motor, so then in the synchronous motor, at the starting, it is difficult to start it by itself. Okay, so therefore it is difficult. But this one, the three-phase induction motor is a self-starting motor. That means whenever you are supplied AC supply for the induction motor, it can run. Okay, because it has a very high starting torque. We don't need to provide any additional component or additional thing uh, to initiate the starting torque, because the induction motor has a high starting torque, the probably higher than the full load torque as well. Therefore the induction motor is a self-starting motor. Okay, unlike in a single-phase induction motor, that is we can't say it is actually as a self-starting motor. We need to have some additional uh, additional parts required to initiation of the torque. Okay, but here we don't need that. So therefore it is very convenient and hence reliable. Okay, so and most versatile as well, because we can obtain a wide range of torques and speeds using the induction motor. So uh, the next thing is the simpler construction. Okay, so the 95% of the induction motors are used as a has a very simple construction. Okay, very simple construction. We can see what is the difference between them. The only 5% of other type of induction motors is used. The most kind of induction motors are simpler in construction. Okay, so simpler in construction, you don't need to worry about anything about that, and what you have to do is just supply the AC supply and it works by its own. Okay, so then the comparatively to the DC motor also, the induction motors has much more higher efficiency. So then the available in wide range of power ratings up to 20 megawatt. Okay, so we can have very high power motors with the induction motors. Okay, with higher than this much for higher power applications, we often use the synchronous motor. Okay, so for the low power region and the mid power range, so for we can use the induction motor. Okay, so in most applications what we required is that range. Okay, so we don't need the motors higher than 20 megawatts. Okay, even if you want to run that kind of load, you can couple several induction motors to run that kind of load. Okay, so the same thing can be achieved. So therefore the applications are used in pumps, compressors, fans and hoists. So these are the main kind of applications. So in most of the industrial arena, these kind of applications are the requirement. Okay, pumps, compressors, fans, those are things required in any industrial premises. Okay, so therefore it is this kind of motor is very important. So one possible drawback of this kind of motor is the due to this operation of the induction motors, the power factor of the system become low. Okay, so that means this induction motor absorb very large amount of reactive power from the supply. Okay, therefore as a result of that, the required apparent power requirement of the induction motor is higher. Okay, so because due to that reason, the power factor become reduced. Okay, so usually the induction motors run at about 0.8 to 0.85 power factor. Okay, so if you need to improve the power factor more than that, you need to provide additional capacitor banks. Okay, so we will look at them later too, about the capacitor banks and power factor improvement. So that is about the main important things about the induction motor. So the other thing is the in most applications this is preferred due to the mechanical strength of this motor. Okay, unlike in any other kind of motor, that means the ruggedness of this induction motor is uncomparable to the other motors. Okay, because when you consider about the rotor of this kind of motor, it is just the mechanical construction. Okay, so there are no electrical parts available, and hence the strength is very higher, and this is for any situation, this is said that this is unbreakable kind of motor. Okay, so unlike in other scenarios, there is a really low probability of this motor being damaged. Okay, due to mechanical problems. Okay, so those are the important features of the induction motor. Now let's try to understand the operation and the construction of this machine. Okay, so now when we consider about the construction, like in any other motor, we can find two parts. Okay, so in any kind of motor, usually we have two parts. Okay, one is the stationary part of the motor, other one is the part which is rotating. Okay, so the static part, so the still part we call the stator. Okay, so the rotating part we identified as the rotor. Okay, so the stator is in induction motor. Stator is responsible to the establishing the magnetic field required in the motor. Okay, so in most of the motors we need they operate on the principles related to electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic induction. Okay, so which means we need to have some the magnetic field in the machine. So the magnetic field is produced by the usually produced by the stator. Okay, so usually in any kind of DC machine, the moving DC machines, particularly motors and generators, we have two parts. Okay, one is the armature, other one is the field. Okay, that means we have two windings, the armature winding and field winding. Okay, so the armature winding means the winding which carries the AC waveform. Okay, so which is called a armature. Okay, so the winding which produces the magnetic field in the machine is called the field winding. Okay, so here the field winding here is the stator. Okay, So and you can consider the armature as rotor. Okay, so but no, usually we since we don't have electrical connection in rotor, most often we don't have electrical connection in the rotor, hence we don't call the uh, since there is no winding there, actual winding, so therefore we don't call it actually by the name armature. Okay, so that is why the name rotor. Okay, so in DC motors we call uh, that part, not the rotor, armature. Okay, because we have winding and the produced induced voltages are AC. Okay, so that is that. For the induction motor also we can identify two things, the stator and rotor. So stator is the act as the is the responsible to establish the magnetic field in the machine. Okay, so that means the stator act as the stator winding act as the field winding. Okay, so then with the according to the construction of the machine, we can identify two main different constructions available. Okay, so the stator construction is same for both types. Okay, so here the induction motor we have two types. The type and the classification is depend on the how we construct the rotor. Okay, the stator for both machines are same. Okay, so when we consider about the two types are the squirrel cage induction motor, and in the second one is the wound rotor induction motor. Okay, so those are the main two types of induction motors available, and let's look at the construction features. Okay, so as I told you, for all type of induction motors we have stator. Okay, so regardless of the type of machine, that means whether it is a squirrel cage or wound rotor, it doesn't matter, we have a stator, and stator construction is same for both types. Okay, so now again the same things we experience in the transformer, same problems we have. Okay, so because the stator we need to have, stator is responsible to producing the magnetic field. Okay, that magnetic field is produced by the current carrying conductors. Okay, current carrying conductors, which means we have a some winding, electrical winding in the stator, right? So in the stator, windings are mounted on a stator core. Okay, so there's a stator core like that. Okay, this is the stator core. Okay, this is kind of stator core. So in the core we have slots. Okay, so we have this kind of slots. Okay, this kind of space slots are provided in the periphery of the stator core. So then those winding conductors are placed inside these are the conductors. Okay, so as you can see, so this is the core. Okay, this is the magnetic core or stator core. Right, so then again you can consider this outer enclosure as the yoke. Okay, that is the yoke. So then this is the stator core, so this part also is stator core. Okay, that is also stator core. Then the stator core, you have slots. Okay, so here also what we see in here is that this is slots are cut in the periphery on the inside of this core, such a way that the conductors, okay, you can see these are the conductors. Okay, conductors of the winding are placed inside those slots. Okay, so we have slots like that, and on the slots we have the winding conductors are placed inside those slots. Okay, that is how the stator core is constructed. Actually, you can understand that this is the 3-phase induction motor, which means this winding should be 3-phase. Okay, that means for you have 3 outputs. Okay, 3 outputs due to you need to have 3 phases. Okay, so that is the stator. So again, to mount those conductors, as we discussed, so we need this magnetic core, okay, or stator core. So then again, as we discussed in the uh, transformer also, so there can be eddy currents induced in this core also. Therefore, to avoid the eddy current losses, so then we have to reduce or minimize the thickness of the core. Therefore, what we do here is, again we have the laminated core. Okay, the laminated construction of a core, which means I have, this is the solid core. Okay, that is formed by this kind of thin laminations. Okay, thin laminations are combined together to form this kind of solid core. Okay, so then each lamination should be insulated from each other. So otherwise it doesn't matter if you form this by lamination. If we don't have any insulation between them, then still this solid act as a one solid rather than laminations. Okay, in order to act as a single lamination, you need to properly insulate the one lamination from another. Okay, so that is the thing you need to understand about the stator construction. So it need a iron core, okay, iron or steel core, and that core is made out of made with the laminated construction like that, and each lamination is properly insulated from each other so that the eddy current loss become minimized. Okay, so then this stator core, we have slots cut out, and in the slots we place the stator winding conductors. Okay, so the stator winding is 3-phase winding, and it is the responsible for creating the magnetic field in the machine, right? So that is the main things you have to understand about the stator construction, right? Right, so with that, hear this. So now let's move on to the next section. This is about the stator. So stator is common for both types, right? So then now let's look at the different kind of rotors available. Okay, depending on the type of rotor, so we classify the motors into 2 categories. Okay, one is wound rotor, one is squirrel cage induction motor. Okay, so the again in the squirrel cage induction motor, what we have as a rotor is this kind of arrangement, right? We have a rotor core, okay, another rotor core, and then instead of a winding, we have a this kind of structure. Okay, structure made. Okay, so you can see this is like the squirrel's cage. Okay, that is why the name. Okay, so it is like a squirrel's cage, that hence the name. Okay, so it's squirrel's cage. So this structure is made like that. Okay, these are conductors. Okay, these are the conductors of the you can say there's no winding, but rotor is made out of these kind of conductors. Okay, those are known as rotor bars. Okay, therefore this squirrel cage is made with several rotor bars. The both side of the rotor bars are connected to two conductor rings. Okay, two conductor rings which are known as the end ring. Okay, end rings. The purpose of these two rings is to the properly assemble those rotor bars into much more rugged structure. So that is the one purpose. The next purpose is to short out those all the rotor bars in both sides so that the total resistance of the rotor become very small. Okay, you can understand that this is like, so if you model the one rotor bar with the okay, some impedance. Okay, suppose okay, so for rotor bars we have impedance, no? So we have impedance. Okay, if you consider this one is rotor bar, so for rotor bars I can represent it like that. Okay, this is Z, this is Z. So likewise there are several rotor bars available. So if you consider about the individually the impedance is Z. So by the slip rings what we are going to do is we are shorting in this end and this end by 2 end rings. Okay, 2 end rings like that, which means now if we have a n number of rotor bars, the total equivalent impedance of the rotor now become Z divided by n. Okay, so therefore the this end ring provide the mechanical strength as well as the reducing of the internal impedance, internal resistance and internal impedance. Okay, so that is the basic construction of the rotor part. So then these rotor bars, again we have a rotor core, and in the rotor core also again made out of some steel iron with the steel iron with the again the laminated construction, and then again there also we have slots. Okay, slots cut out like that, and those rotor bars are placed inside those slots, right? Those slots. So then we can have another outer core like that. Okay, so this is the actual rotor core construction. Okay, so you can see they are made out of thick thick conductor bars, rotor bars, and then these two, this one and other end one are the end rings. Okay, so end rings. So then we have core is connected to the shaft of the machine. So these are the cross section or lamination of the core. Okay, so the core is made like that. Okay, so again with the laminated construction, by combining the several this kind of laminations, we obtain the rotor core, and in the rotor core inside these are slots. Okay, so you can see these whites, these are the slots. In the slots we place the rotor bars of the this squirrel cage structure. Okay, so all together that part is called the rotor. Okay, this is the total rotor that is fully assembled with the core as well as the this end ring. Okay, so those are properly fitted and look like a this kind of structure. Okay, so again the conductor bars either made with the copper or aluminum. Okay, so they should be proper conductors so that the impedance is very low. Okay, so that is the basic construction in the squirrel cage. So then next thing you can observe here is, so these the rotor bars, okay, so are not perfectly in parallel with the longitudinal axis or the shaft of the motor. Okay, so let's look at why it is. Okay, so again here like that squirrel cage motor, in practice the none of the rotor bars are in perfectly in parallel or perfectly in alignment with the this rotor shaft. Okay, or rotor longitudinal axis. Okay, by doing so we can reduce the magnetic hum or noise. Okay, so if you experience the the operation of the induction motor, you can see, you can understand that there is a little sound or hum coming out of the induction motor, even with this kind of construction. Okay, so if they are made in perfectly aligned with the shaft, so then this hum is increased. Therefore, to reduce that, we have this kind of change. That means we change the alignment, or we call it the skew. Okay, so skewed means we are deviate from the perfection. Okay, so that is what does it mean by skewed. So skewed means it is connected with the such that they are not perfectly aligned. Okay, you can clearly see. So this one is in not perfectly parallel with that. Okay, so that means the shaft is in this direction, our rotor bars have path like that. Okay, path like that, right? So that is what does it mean by skewed. Okay, so if the rotor bars are placed like this, so then we call it is perfectly in alignment with the this shaft. Okay, so but actually in practice it is not. Okay, so the one reason is to reduce the magnetic hum or noise produced due to the torque variation like that. Okay, so if the rotor bar is like that, that means for different sections of this rotor bar experience different flux. Okay, therefore that make the uh, magnetic field by rotor bar more uniform, and hence reduce the noise. Okay, so that is what is the requirement of this skewed connection. Okay, so then induced torque is become smoother. Okay, so because now the magnetic field the experienced by the single rotor bar is the total cumulative effect of the magnetic field in this section. Okay, so that means from here to here the total magnetic is properly become balanced. Okay, that means if you have the perfectly aligned rotor bar like this, so then the magnetic field experienced by the rotor bar in every point is similar. Okay, but in this kind of situation, so the magnetic field experience here is different from here. Okay, so therefore the ultimate magnetic field experienced by the total rotor bar is the average of those total flux. Okay, hence the magnetic field become much more averaged or much more smooth. Okay, hence the motor run in much more smooth way. Okay, so then the next thing is avoid the magnetic locking of the stator teeth and rotor core teeth. Okay, so as I earlier mentioned, so if I draw the stator, okay, we have stator. So these things we call slots. Okay, so slots are where our stator winding conductors are there. Okay, so then we have some configurations like this. Okay, that means we have some these are like valleys, whereas these are like mountains. Okay, so these structures are called teeth. These are the teeth of the stator core. Okay, so same way for my rotor core also I have the same kind of arrangement. Okay, like this. These are slots. These are called teeth. Okay, these are rotor teeth. These are the stator teeth. Okay, so now suppose the situation where this teeth and this teeth become perfectly aligned. So that means the magnetic field is now going from here to here. Okay, so then they can be locked together and try to stay at that position because due to that. Okay, that means this means the this teeth act as a become magnetized and act as a south pole, and this is as a north pole. Okay, so then they become attracted together and can be tend to attract. Okay, and hence there is a problem for rotation of the machine. Okay, therefore we need to avoid such connections. Okay, so if we do that way, which means my slots are also cutted like skewed. Okay, they are also skewed. So they are skewed, but in the stator we have perfectly aligned slots. Okay, therefore the teeth are not perfectly aligned like that. Okay, therefore the magnetic locking phenomena is reduced. Okay, that is the one reason why we use skewed slots and skewed rotor bars. Okay, so then it is said that they increase the transformation ratio between state and rotor. Okay, so that is also one the good consequences of this. Okay, so sometimes it acts as bad, but usually which means the flux linkage between the rotor and the stator become higher as the transformation ratio is higher. Okay, so that is another reason why we use that. Okay, to increase the flux linkage and hence increase the transformation ratio. Okay, so from the next things you can understand why this is act like a rotary transform. Okay, that is why we are talking about transformation ratio. Okay, we earlier talk about, when we discussing about the transformer, we talk about the transformer voltage ratio. Okay, here also we can model the induction motor as a transformer. Okay, rotating transformer. In that sense we can define a transformer ratio like that. Okay, so by doing this, this is equivalent to having a large number of turn winding if you skew the rotor bars. Okay, the length of another important thing is another consequences of this is the rotor bar lengths are increases. Okay, rotor bar lengths are increases and hence the rotor resistance increases. Okay, so rotor resistance increase is another phenomena of this skewed connection. Okay, likewise you should be able to understand why this is important. Okay, so skewing the rotor bars. Okay, that is the squirrel cage rotor construction. Okay, so as you can see, it is just a mechanical part. Okay, there are no actual electrical connection. The only thing we have is the conductors, right? We have conductors, but there is no actual direct electrical connection to anything. Okay, so we are not taking any electrical connection from it, and we are not providing any electrical connection to the rotor as well. Okay, so with the two end rings, the strength of this structure is very high. Okay, that is why this is a very rugged construction. Okay, so because the only parts here are the mechanical, and mechanical parts are also nicely fitted together to form a structure which is unbreakable. Okay, so even with the very high torque, it is highly unlikely this rotor bars being damaged or disconnect. Okay, so therefore it is very reliable too. Okay, because of this mechanical structure. Okay, that is why most people consider the induction motor is a superior motor to other kind of motor, right? So with that, let's move on to the wound rotor induction type. Okay, so now here unlike in a squirrel cage, so here we have a electrical connection to the there is electrical connection in rotor. Okay, so you have here you have the 3-phase windings in a stator, and same kind of, that means the same kind of that means mirror image of the stator winding should be implemented in the wound rotor induction motor. Okay, so that means the both windings should be same, which means the number of poles in the stator should be same as that of the rotor. Okay, so here the what we have is a rotor constructed with this kind of conductors. Okay, again we have a rotor core. Okay, this is the rotor core is there. Then in the rotor core we have a winding. Okay, like in the stator we have a winding like this, and the conductors of the winding are placed in the slots of the core. Okay, again those conductors also is skewed to obtain the same important advantages as I mentioned earlier, right? So then the important thing about this wound rotor construction is we have 3 slip rings provided. Okay, 3 slip rings provided. These windings, the one side of the windings are connected to these 3 slip rings, and other side is connected either in mostly in star connection, right? The other point is star connected, whereas the other end of the all 3-phase windings are connected to the 3 slip rings. Okay, that means 3 phases are connected to 3 slip rings. Okay, so using those 3 slip rings and the brushes, so we can connect the external circuit. Okay, that is the most significant thing about the wound rotor. Okay, so here you can see the in a actual motor the 3 slip rings. Okay, therefore this kind of motor can be easily identified as well. Okay, so if you see a 3 usually if you see a 3 slip rings, it is highly likely that the motor is induction motor, right? So you can find this kind of slip rings in synchronous motors also, but typically you can identify it as a slip ring motor if we have 3 slip rings, right? So again the construction of the core is again should be laminated core. Then these conductors should be in copper or aluminium. So those are main things you need to know about the wound rotor induction motor. So the main significant part here is the the 3 slip rings which are mounted on the same shaft as the motor, right? So the same shaft we have 3 slip rings so that we can connect external circuit to the wound rotor induction motor. Okay, so now so when in the operation, during the operation, if you are not going to connect any external circuit via the slip rings, so then we should short all these 3 windings. Okay, so we need to obtain the same kind of structure as the as we did in the spiral cage. No? Therefore, we need to shorted out this end as well. Okay, so in the other end, the all 3 windings are shorted, and in this winding also, when in running, you have to shorten. Okay, otherwise, if you want, you can connect a resistive part, and then again still you need to short out the 3 slip rings in order to run it. Okay, so that is how the wound rotor induction motor works, and you can understand here that since we have windings, okay, windings are in a slots. Now this structure is not as strength, not as strength like the spiral cage induction motor, right? So because we have the several conductors and windings, So when during if the speed is very high, so there can be some damage happen to these conductors. If they are damaged, so then the motor will not operate correctly. Okay, so with the required performance will not be given by the motor, and hence this is not as rugged as the squirrel cage. Okay, so on the other hand, the internal resistance. Okay, when we compare the internal resistance with the squirrel cage, so the internal resistance is higher. Okay, this one is higher. Okay, therefore the high rotor copper losses also is a one drawback of wound rotor induction motor, since the copper loss is high, so the efficiency can be lower, but typically these machines also run with high efficiencies. Okay, so because the main reason for that is these kind of the motors are only used for very high power application, right? For very high power applications, we can neglect the copper loss. Hence, the efficiency of uh, the wound rotor induction motor is become higher, going higher with the load that this motor run. Okay, so higher the uh, power of the motor, the higher the efficiency. Okay, in fact that is true for most of the electrical machines. Okay, so even for DC motor, even for transformer, even for this induction motor, the higher the machine or higher the rating, the higher the efficiency, right? So that is the things you have to understand about the wound rotor. So in you can connect 3 brushes to these 3 slip rings, and via the brushes you can uh, the supply or get the power connection from here as well. Okay, so now let's move to the next one. This is the again the this shows the how we connect the windings. Okay, so the 3-phase windings, in one side you connected like the star point, or this also shorted. Okay, so this is like shorted now. So all the end of these windings are shorted. So then you can connect. We have 3 slip rings, and with the slip rings you can have 3 brushes like that, and from the brush you can connect the external resistor if required. Okay, so we are using this kind of arrangement to speed control or starting the induction motor, so we can discuss that later. So then the other end should be shorted like that. Okay, shorted like in the typical squirrel cage induction motor, right? So that is the electrical connection of the wound rotor induction motor. We the 3-phase winding should be connected like that. Okay, so in one end it is already shorted, and on the other end also when running you should short them like that. Okay, so those are things you have to understand about wound rotor. So you should be able to compare the things about the wound rotor and the squirrel cage induction motor. Okay, so you compare, the mechanical strength is mechanically rugged, more rugged is the squirrel cage type. So this one is less mechanically strengthened than the squirrel cage. So then in wound rotor induction motor, we have a winding in a rotor. So in the squirrel cage we don't have any winding in the rotor, just have the mechanical structure. Okay, so then the internal resistance of the wound rotor machine is higher, the rotor resistance is higher, whereas the rotor resistance of the squirrel cage is lesser than this one. Okay, so then external circuits can be connected to the wound rotor induction motor rotor, whereas we can't connect any additional circuitry to the rotor in the squirrel cage induction motor. Okay, so those are the some important things you have to note. So you should be able to compare between them. Okay, so wound rotor induction motor is used for high power application, whereas the squirrel cage is used more often with the low and medium power rated applications. Okay, so the wound rotor induction motors for the same rated value, the copper loss can be higher than the squirrel cage induction motor. Likewise, there are you should be able to compare. Okay, so that is about the wound rotor. So now let's try to understand the principle of operation of the induction machine. Okay, so earlier we look at the construction even without knowing how actually this operate. So now let's try to understand how actually this works. Okay, so the name of this motor is induction motor. Okay, so you can obviously understand from that this motor operate on the principle of induction. Okay, so that means this motor is based on the this electromagnetic principles like Faraday's law, Planck's law. So then you need to have understanding about the Fleming's law. Okay, so how to obtain the direction of the force. So depending on that, those are the main principles related to induction motor. Okay, so main thing you have to understand about this induction motor is using a three-phase stator, we create a magnetic field. Okay, again I earlier explained that. So we are creating a magnetic field, but using a three-phase, that means the three-phase current is varying with time. Okay, so due to this three-phase windings and the way we connected the three-phase windings in the stator, so we connected them in a such a way that this stator winding produces a magnetic field with a constant magnitude, but the direction is changing with the time. That means actually it produces a rotating magnetic field in the air gap of the induction motor. Okay, so we have stator, so then we have a small air gap, so then only we have the rotor. Okay, they are not fitted all together. The rotor and stator, there is no connection, there is a air gap between them. So first what stator does is it produces a rotating magnetic field around this air gap. Okay, so that magnetic field is again magnetic fluxes interact with the rotor, and that creates a torque. Okay, so you can understand that you have done this experiment in a very little time also. If you suspend a permanent magnet with north south, and again if you keep another magnet here like south north, okay, with the same polarity, so then this magnet repels. Okay, this magnet repels. So if we can move this magnet with this, so then we can rotate this magnet indefinitely. Okay, so the same principle apply here. So what we are going to do is we are going to produce the rotating field by the stator winding, and stator winding produce the rotating field. So then there is induced EMF in the rotor bars. Okay, the rotor bars, there will be induced EMF and there will be current. So due to this current, there will be the torque and torque produced. So what actually the rotor tries to do is, again it tries to produce the magnetic field by itself such that it follow the original field. Okay, however actually the original field cannot be properly followed. However, that is the basic principle. Okay, the same principle that I discussed. Okay, so whenever there is a rotating field, so the rotor doesn't like that. Okay, so there will be induced EMF in their rotor bars. So the rotor doesn't like that. So then it tries to minimize the effect of the rotating magnetic field by again trying to rotate itself. Okay, that is the main idea behind induction motor. Okay, now let's try to understand this. Okay, therefore the rotating direction will be also in the same direction as the rotation of the rotor also should be in the same direction as the rotation of the magnetic field, right? So now let's try to understand this like this, right? So now suppose consider this kind of situation. Now suppose at some time, suppose we have south pole here. Okay, we have south pole, and suppose this conductor. Okay, consider this conductor. There are several rotor bars in the rotor. So consider this rotor bar. Okay, so now what happened is due to the operation of the stator, this field is actually rotating. Okay, so I can for this situation I can draw the magnetic flux in this direction. Okay, because this is the south pole, right? So south pole is suppose rotating in a clockwise direction. Okay, so this one is rotating in a clockwise direction. So now what happened is this can be actually identified by different ideas. Okay, so one thing you can identify here is so you obviously know from the Faraday's law, if there is a the time varying magnetic field is there, if there is a conductor inside that time varying field, so then there will be induced voltage. Okay, so then the Lenz law said that that induced EMF is in such a way that it opposes the original effect of the that magnetic field, right? So then let's try to understand by that. Okay, so now what happened here is the rotation is in not the conductor. Okay, suppose conductor is not moving at first, so now the magnetic field is rotating, right? The magnetic field is rotating, so I can think this as another way. Okay, which is the rather than rotating the magnetic field, I can rotate the conductor, right? So then if the rotation direction of this one is in this direction, it is like conductor is moving in opposite direction, right? So that means the conductor is now moving in this kind of direction, right? With some, suppose, the same velocity as the velocity of this magnetic field, right? So if that is the case, now my magnetic field becomes stationary. Okay, my magnetic field direction is in this direction, right? So now you know the equation. The induced EMF is given by the E cross B dot L. Okay, these are in vector notation, so you can write VBL sine theta. Okay, that is the magnitude, VBL sine theta, right? So doesn't matter about that. We can use the right hand rule to find the Fleming's right hand rule to find the direction of the induced EMF. Okay, so if you use that, you can find that it is to the screen, right? If the velocity is in this direction, field is in this direction, so then my induced EMF is in such a way that the current flow of the conductor is in this direction, right? So that is that. Okay, the same way consider this now. Okay, so the same kind of thing here it is a 3D representation. Okay, so now consider this conductor. Okay, this conductor again it is suppose it is rotating at this direction. Okay, so that means anti-clockwise direction, and it is under north pole and this is magnetic field is rotating. Okay, instead of rotating the magnetic field, now I am rotating the this conductor, and then it should be in opposite direction. Okay, that means magnetic field is in rotating in this direction. So then I have to consider my rotating direction of the conductor as this direction, right? This is the V direction. So then my the north pole is in this direction. Okay, so in this direction. So then if you use that, so you can identify that in this conductor again the current flow should be in this direction, right? So that means the induced EMF should be in the to the screen. Okay, to the screen means the current is flowing from here to here, right? So if you again consider the this kind of the pole, again the rotating direction is this direction. Rotating direction is this direction, and my magnetic field is in this direction, which means this is V, this is B. That means my current should be in this direction. Okay, that means actually it should be coming out to the out from the screen, right? So that means this should be dot. Okay, this dot means it is in our direction, right? So likewise you can be understand that. So now anyway there is induced EMF and there will be current flowing in this direction, right? Current flowing in this direction. Now again the magnetic field is in this direction, right? So then you can use the Fleming's law, Fleming's left hand rule now to find the direction of force. Okay, so that means current is in this direction, so the B is in this direction. So then using Fleming's left hand rule, you can find that the direction of rotation of the this conductor, or the force direction of the force acting also in this direction, right? Now here use again here for here. So if you consider here the current is in to the current is to the screen and field is in this direction, hence my force acting is in this direction. Okay, due to this force acting, since this rotor is mounted on a shaft, which means it is pivoted around some point. Okay, pivoted around the axis of the shaft. Okay, so which means due to this force there will be torque. Okay, so torque means there will be acceleration and the rotor this start moving, and it is continuously start moving, right? So now once it start moving, you have to consider the relative motion. Okay, so here also we consider the relative motion now. That means the relative motion between the this rotating magnetic field and this rotor. Okay, so therefore if the speed of the rotor is omega r, and if the rotation of this one is omega s, so then you can obviously understand that the flux variation is experienced by this conductor is actually the relative speed. Okay, so this velocity is actually the relative velocity. Okay, so if the angular velocity is omega s and omega r, you can show that the induced EMF value is proportional to the omega s minus omega r, right? That means it is relative to the relative speed. Okay, so here also we get the relative speed now, because that means the earlier actually what here rotates is the magnetic field. This rotor conductor remains stationary. Okay, so but to understand our idea, we consider this as the rotating in this direction, and this one is stationary. That means we take the relative speed of the conductor related to the with respect to the magnetic field. Okay, the same way, whenever this rotor is rotating, again you should take the same thing. Okay, therefore this E is proportional to the omega s minus omega r, right? So that is the basic principle. Okay, the principle is there will be some torque and force, and hence there is a torque, and hence the motor is rotate at the same direction as the same direction, right? Same direction as the actual rotation of the magnetic field, right? So that is the basic principle. We can conclude that and we can do the rest here. So then let's wind up for today, okay?